Man, Marquette was really good last year. Shaka's been doing a lot of great things at Marquette. They haven't gotten over that hump and made that deep March run, but in this college landscape where there's so much turnover, to see the way Shaka's running that program, it's something special. And any season could be the one where they make the Final Four or further. So Christian here with Nick. Special guest today is Ben Steele, who covers Marquette for the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. I wanted to say Centennial. Ben, great to have you. So tell us, is that momentum, the momentum is rolling right now for Marquette, and you keep so many guys. So, you lose Kolek and Oso, but generally, what are the expectations this year?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of hit on it. It's kind of interesting the way Shaka Smart runs his program. It's kind of, counterintuitive to the way other coaches are doing it now, in that Shaka really values retention and developing players and not losing them to the portal, really concentrating on, you'll hear, if you log on to any interview that Shaka Smart does on YouTube or wherever, read about it on the Journal Sentinel, if you're so inclined. Shaka Smart mentions relationships in every interview that he does. And he really, that's one of his core values as a coach. And you see it playing out in the way that he's been able to retain these players. And this year is going to be a big test of that. You lose two guys that were drafted in the NBA, in Tyler Kolek and Oso Ighodaro. Some coaches would have gone into the portal and try to, bring in players of hopefully equal accomplishments as them. But Shaka's doing it his way. He's just thinking everyone just takes a bigger role this season. So you got guys like Zayd Lowry and Trey Norman, who didn't play a lot last year. Normally on any other college team, they would be candidates to transfer to another school. But this year they're in the mix for rotation players as rotation players. So it'll be interesting. This year might be like a big test of Shaka's plan and how his culture and how he's running this program.
For sure. It's very unorthodox, and with the portal nowadays and everything, they get no transfers, but to bring back this amount of players and the quality of players is just a testament to him and the culture he's built at Marquette. So we knew what they were like with Oso and Kolek last season. But what is the floor should be raised this season just because everyone back. But what do you think the ceiling will be like? And who do you think that starting five will be this season?
Yeah, well, first we'll go through the starting five, and then we'll kind of play off their playing style. So you got Cam Jones. He's probably going to be the star player this year. He's going to have the ball in his hands a lot more. Not really a prototypical point guard. He's more of a bucket getter, but he's really good with the ball in his hands, and we saw that last year. So he'll kind of take over ball handling duties, I think. Then Stevie Mitchell, another senior who's been here since Shaka Smart arrived at Marquette. He's a defensive guy. He'll be a candidate for defensive player of the year in the Big East. And sliding into the starting lineup for Oso, it's going to be Ben Gold. He's a big guy from New Zealand, played at high school at the NBA Academy in Australia. Really talented, really skilled guy. He's really different from Oso. So that's probably going to, we could talk about him as kind of like the swing guy and how this team's going to play. And then you got David Joplin and Chase Ross will probably round out the starting five returning players. If you're looking for a breakout guy, I would look at Chase Ross because he was kind of banged up last year. I kind of penciled him in as the breakout guy last season. He had flashes, but he just got waylaid by injuries last season. He hurt his shoulder. He missed a handful of games. When he came back, he was wearing a shoulder harness. I think that affected him some. And then he hurt his lower leg at the end of the season. That should be your starting five. And stylistically, it's a little different with Ben Gold as the center. Oso Ighodaro, he had a lot of skills. One thing he couldn't do was shoot the ball. So everything he did was he was either passing it out on the perimeter or he was scoring buckets around the basket. That's the only place he took his shots. But Ben Gold, he could step outside and he could shoot it. So I think you're going to see a lot of 5-out offense, really stretch the defense out, really create driving lanes for the other players. That's where it's going to be different this season. And it'll be interesting, how Cam, that should open up Cam Jones too, right, as a bucket getter. But there'll be more lanes to the basket. There's not a big guy clogging around the basket. It'll be interesting. It'll be different, but I mean, it's still going to be kind of the free flowing offense that Marquette's played the last couple seasons. Defensively, I think too, this team has a little bit more depth, a little bit more length and athleticism, and I think you're going to see like more of that Shaka Smart. It's not going to be like the havoc full court pressure that he played at VCU, but it's going to be more disruptive, I think, and create a lot more turnovers this season.
So you hinted at a couple of things that intrigue me the most about this team. The first one is how much of a point guard role is Cam Jones playing? Because we know that he can, work as a pick and roll operator and, average a couple assists last year. But like Kolek was at such an elite level as a passer and running the offense. And Oso, as you mentioned, like as a short roller, as a playmaker, even though he couldn't shoot it, he still, added a level of, being dynamic as a 5-man. So question one is Sean Jones a factor here at all? And is there someone, if it's not him, if he's still not able to play, who is the next guy in line as the lead ball handler?
Yeah. So Sean Jones, he tore his ACL in January. As much as I've heard, his rehab's going well. We'll see closer to like when October, middle of October, late October, as we start getting closer to games, if he's going to be ready. It's probably going to at least be a couple months optimistically before he's able to play. Now he's a smaller player. He really relies on his explosiveness. So they want to make sure that he's fully 100% back before they put him on the floor. So that's the situation to watch over the next couple months. But until Sean's completely ready, Trey Norman's a guy that's probably going to step into that ball handling role. He, didn't play a lot as a freshman last season, came in as, a heralded kind of a recruit, a top 100 recruit. But he's like a natural leader. He's a natural point guard. Struggled with his shot a little last year, but he's definitely a guy that's in line for a bigger role. So as far as a ball handler, he's a guy that people should probably get to know before the season starts.
And then following up on that, the part two is we saw Ben Gold operate as a full-time player when Oso was out, and he brings a lot of enticing offensive qualities with his shooting and his skill level. Defensively, it's hard for him to be what Oso was. So I'm wondering if him taking a jump defensively is something that's expected, and two, who is next in line at that 5 spot? I know there's some freshmen, and was it Alamadu? Is he a guy that could be in the mix there?
He's still kind of raw as a player. He's still developing. He didn't start playing basketball until a couple years ago. He's still pretty young. He's still pretty raw, very athletic, very skilled. But he's still, if he plays at all this season, I think it's going to be a small role. But as far as a backup 5, like Caden Hamilton's going to be the guy. He redshirted last season. He's like a 6'9". He's different than Ben Golden. He's like a bigger body. And it's going to be really interesting this season, for the past, decade under Shaka Smart's teams going back to Texas. He's really had a lot of skinny, athletic, pogo stick type of 5-man. Caden Hamilton's a little different. Like he's thicker. He's more of a banger. I think Shaka and the coaching staff kind of looked at playing in the Big East, and they needed that kind of banger body. And that's why they brought Caden Hamilton in. They're working with him. He's changed his body. He's still thick, but he's stronger than he was when he came in. He gives them just a different dynamic. And you touched on it, but they're really going to miss like Oso's versatility as a defender. Oso was like 6'11", and he could switch on to guards and stick with them with his quick foot speed. I don't know if Ben Gold's athletic, but he's not quite as athletic as Oso was. So that's going to be different. It's going to be interesting to see how they manage that as far as like, last year they could switch 1 through 5 with all those guys that were playing. I don't know if they could do that with Ben Gold and Caden Hamilton too. He doesn't have the same foot speed as those guys. So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of plays out.
Yeah, for sure. Just to kind of go off that, last season they were average possession length on defense was 361st in the country. So they were, and on the flip side on offense, they were 9th in the country. So like they had a true identity last season, just to kind of back that up and everything. Are there any impactful freshmen this season, or is it more just some guys coming in just to develop maybe redshirt potentially?
No, I think two guys, freshmen that people should get to know. Demarius Owens, first of all, I think he's going to crack the rotation. Shaka said that a couple times over the summer that, if a game started right now, he'd be in the rotation. He's like a 6'8", super athletic guy. He can handle the ball really well. I watched a couple practices over the summer. That's really stood out to me as like he had really good ball handling and passing vision as like a 6'8". I think he's only 17 right now. I don't know if he's actually turned 18 yet. I'd have to double check that, but regardless, super young. But he's really skilled. And then interestingly, Demarius Owens' teammate in high school, Royce Parham, they played together at a prep school in Ohio. He's another guy that could challenge for a rotation spot as a freshman. He's like a 6'9", different than Demarius, and like he's more of an inside type player, although he's working on stepping out and shooting the three. So he should be another guy that you could play like 5 out. Like all freshmen, Shaka's mentioned that a couple times, like, they have to get better defensively, and if Shaka's going to play them, like they have to be better defensively, but they've been working on that. But those two guys are the names to know as freshmen.
Cool. One other thing. So last year, obviously in the tournament, it appeared that a path was open, with NC State, and obviously they were a wagon in March, but that 4 for 31 performance from three has got to be something that stung a lot, right? And what, obviously now it's been in the past and that's motivation, but what was the, obviously it was devastating. I don't know exactly what I'm asking here, but like it really just sucked that the 4 for 31 from three seemed like the only thing stopping that team from, really getting a matchup with Purdue in the Final Four, and then, having a fourth shot at UConn. And I, like, honestly, Marquette was my bracket champion. I actually thought Marquette could have won it all last year.
Yeah. I mean, the whole team talked about last year. I mean, that was the roster that they had last season. They were top 10 team all season. I mean, that was the year that everything seemed to be lining up for them. And then it lined up for them, like you mentioned, in the tournament. But yeah, it's just, you picked a bad day to have a bad shooting night. NC State had, Marquette's whole offense was kind of disoriented just because Marquette's offense is kind of predicated on getting into the paint and kicking it out and driving closeouts and getting easy shots that way. But they just couldn't get into the paint against Marquette. And Marquette had some, untimely injuries at the end of the season. Sean Jones, obviously, after tearing his ACL in January, was out. But Tyler Kolek had torn his oblique and missed 6 games and came back just for the NCAA tournament. And Oso was banged up. Stevie Mitchell was banged up. I mentioned Chase Ross had been bothered by a lot of injuries. So a lot of factors went against them in March. That happens. That's the tournament for you. You have one bad shooting game and, your dreams are ended right there. But it is motivation. Like I talked to Cam Jones over the summer, and he brought up the loss a couple times, and just like you could still see the emotion like in his eyes and disappointment in that. And that's one of the reasons why he wanted to come back and didn't even, entertain notions of entering the transfer portal or even testing the waters of the NBA draft, which I personally thought he would do, just to get some honest feedback from NBA guys. But he mentioned that loss and wanting to cement his legacy as being a guy who wins in March, to be like one of those Marquette legends that he's talked about wanting to be among. And he knows that having a deep run in March is one of the only ways to do that. And so it really is motivating to those guys, that loss that they suffered.
Right. And, I think Cam can totally be that Marquette legend. I think he could be an All-American. So he is such a surefire thing. We hinted at how much of a point guard is he versus scorer this year. It doesn't really matter. He's going to be great no matter what. And what's, the fact that Marquette is retaining all this talent, and you have so many guys who are of a similar mold in Joplin, in Ross, in Mitchell, in Lowry, and Norman. And I'm expecting everyone to be in the mix and to contribute. If you had to predict who is the second fiddle, who is the second highest scorer on this team this year? Is it Ross?
It could be Ike. Ross would be like a good guy to bet on in that situation. David Joplin, another good, especially if they start playing that 5-out style. I think he'll get more open shots, 3-point range. He's a really good 3-point shooter, and he's got good size. So I think either David Joplin or Chase Ross would be probably in the mix to be that number 2 scorer.
Cool. Well, Ben, thank you so much for your time. Excited to watch this Marquette team play this year, and shout out to Shaka for zagging while everyone else is zigging and saying, I'm going to do it my way. I don't care that the landscape is changing because I can succeed this way. So I respect that, and I'm a fan of Marquette. So we appreciate your time, Ben. Hope you have a great season.
Awesome. Appreciate you guys. I know when the podcast invitations start popping up in the email, we know it's basketball season. It's coming up right around the corner.
Oh, yeah. All right. Take care.
Thank you, man.